The history of men and women in the United States is complex, in part because men and women have always been together, a fact of species survival. And for most of human history, and in most places of the world, women were, and continue to be, held in an inferior status. Property, chattel, servants, and caretakers, child rearers. U.S. history is not so different from anywhere else in the world. Women were treated special in one way in the eyes of males, but also subject to male authority. As you know, blacks, or at least the males, officially had the right to vote in the United States long before women, after the Civil War. Women only won that right in 1920, but still were, and are, treated unequally for a variety of social, biological, and cultural rationales. And while women in the United States and in most Western countries have greatly advanced their rights and status, they're still not where males are. We've made great strides, but sexism, like racism, still exists, and we still have to deal with it as managers of people. It's not ideology, it's the facts of life as we relate to it. Of course, discrimination is not limited to race and sex. Our history is also a history of religious persecution and discrimination. Some colonists, like the Pilgrims, came to the U.S. to escape religious persecution, but they in turn continued to persecute other religions. Despite First Amendment protections for religion, discrimination of non-Protestant and particularly non-Christian people continues. Currently, we're in the midst of an evolution of rights for those with different sexual orientations. The Supreme Court has approved gay marriage, and a growing majority of Americans accepts the legitimacy of those with non-heterosexual orientations. And though we are aware of it, no one really talks much about discrimination based on height, body type, physical attractiveness, and political ideology, even though they're there. The discrimination is there, it's proven, and management decisions are influenced by these other factors, but mostly those haven't been considered illegal. So, we cannot deny that history of discrimination in the United States, but at the same time, we should be aware of and celebrate our progress. The evolution of human rights in the past 50 years in the United States has been nothing short of breathtaking. In a single generation, the rights of blacks, women's, Native, and gay Americans have been totally transformed from what they were. Similar advances have been made by Asians and Hispanic peoples. To have a society change so incredibly in such a short time is amazing. Our children are growing up in a totally different world than my generation. Yes, this nation was founded on racism and sexism, but it has changed enormously. We had an African American president. Someone from a group that makes up 12% of the US population was elected by a majority of the voters. That's truly amazing and worth celebrating. We also had the first female nominee of a major party for president. And the remarkable thing is that opposition to her mostly revolved around her politics rather than her sex. Is there still discrimination? Of course. The election of President Obama graphically revealed racism that many said had disappeared. But still, the positive changes have been great and they continue. I grew up at a time when a multiracial couple was a scandal, and the few that were out there were ostracized. And now, while still noticeable, it's more and more unremarkable. Women are now the majority of those attending college and are the majority of graduates. They have broken into so many professions that they were essentially prohibited from just a generation ago. Progress has been incredible. The United States has been a beacon to the world for individual rights and freedoms, and we continue to be so. We were founded as a nation of immigrants, and we continue to be so. Around the world, different ethnic, racial, and religious groups are killing each other. And while our actions are not always consistent, and we have had killings in the past, in the United States, our political narrative is that everyone is equal and has the same rights. we continue to move in this direction despite some setbacks. This week, your readings are on various aspects of the history of diversity in the United States. That history is so huge, I can only hint at various aspects. And even though we have a lot of readings, I still failed to cover a lot of things.